Good morning, Canvas. How's everyone doing? It is awesome to be here. You guys really love Jesus because the Niners start at 10. And I'm not looking. I have everything on Do Not Disturb because there's something more important we're going to talk about, and it's Jesus. Um, I love the series that you're in. I love Pastor Travis and Pastor Jenna. I love Canvas Church. I'm really grateful for our partnership. And he asked if we could preach on this topic, living a life that outlives your life. Living a life that outlives your life. Um, in 2022, I actually had heart surgery. And that was quite shocking because I look relatively young, but I'm not. I'm 43. And it was quite shocking because in preparation for this heart surgery, my doctor was like, "Oh, do you have an end of life plan?" And I was like, what? I'm 40. I don't have anything prepared for the end of life. And I was faced with the reality of, man, this could actually end bad. And for the first time in my life, I put an end of life plan together. And it was a sobering moment in my life. And I actually, when I went in to my heart surgery, I think it was February 22nd, 2022, 22222. Um, I had the most peace I had ever had in my life was the day I went into surgery because I had to wrestle the demons within me, take the dragons that were hiding in the shadow, and I had to wrestle them down one by one and surrender everything to God. My wife, God, that's not even my wife. I mean, she is on this earth, but ultimately that's your daughter. I was asked to be with her for however long you entrusted me with her. And each one of my four kids, God, these are not my kids. You gave them to me temporarily, and I've done my best, and now they're yours. I surrender them. The ministry. It's crazy what happens when you're faced with, you may die. You could possibly very much, die. And here's the thing, when you're young, you don't think about that. It's just like, man, I want to make a name for myself. I mean, those of you who are in San Francisco and you're successful, you obviously can't be in the city without having some measure of tenacity and success. You can't. Okay, everyone here is working 2 to 3 jobs, you're hustling, or you're just incredibly successful. You came here because you want to make a name for yourself. You want to do something on this earth. You want to leave a contribution. You want to impact the world. That's good stuff. That comes from God. But when you're faced with these kind of realities, like, but what happens if you were to die, though? Are you ready for that? Well, I get the privilege to bring that message today. So I want to ask you, what kind of life are you aiming for? What kind of life are you aiming for? Have you ever thought about that? You need to maybe go on a silent retreat or break away from technology and family and friends and just get away and say, wait a second, if I was faced with the reality of death and I'm going to stand before a holy God and my whole life is going to be assessed and I will either be judged or rewarded based on the life that I lived and the commands that he gave, and if I follow them or not, am I ready for that moment? And this is why I get the honor of sharing with you. See, because if we're honest, most of us have kind of the same dream in life. And it's what we honestly call the American dream. I just want a house, man. Preferably on the Marina Green. All right? Just right there, on the Marina Green. Pastor Travis said, come on. If anyone has one, please give it to Travis so we can spend Fleet Week there. I just want to be there. Um, I just want a house. I just want a significant other to love me unconditionally. Maybe a few children to bear my name. I want to make an impact in this world. Build a company, build an app, do something that impacts people. And just a handful of vacations. I'm not greedy. Just one vacation a year, early retirement, and when I die, just pain free in my sleep. And all of us, we want that. The scary thing about that is we would take that even if God wasn't involved in that life. We'd be like, I'll take that. Even if God doesn't, like, is not integral in my life, I want that. That's my goal. Even without God. But that's scary, folks, because this just proves that, hey, God's just an addition to my life, not the very purpose of my life. That's the shift that has to happen when we are Christians. Now, if you're not a Christian in this room, then you don't understand what I'm talking about. But I'd invite you to explore the claims of Jesus, surrender your life to him, and then get on that journey right away. There's no greater decision you'll ever make in your life. But for those of us who are Christians, we say we are followers of Christ. Folks, we don't have an American dream we're pursuing anymore. Jesus is not an addition to everything else in our life. I remember when my dad got saved, because we come from a Buddhist family. You know, my dad was Buddhist and his mom was Buddhist, and long lineage of. My dad was the first generation Christian, and when he got saved, it kind of shocked my grandma, his mom. But she was very much just like, oh yes, 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 that sounds good, that sounds good. You know, Buddha good, Jesus good too. It's like, folks, that's how we think of spirituality, especially in San Francisco. It's like, yeah, I'll take a little bit of this, take a little truth from here, a little truth from here, a little truth from here. I'll composite it to just be my philosophy of spirituality. None of that is ever going to last, folks. When we surrender our life to Jesus, we surrender everything. And then we come to him and we say, Lord, I surrender. What would you like? And he says often things that go right to our hearts. He knows if we were to spend an hour having coffee with Jesus, he'd ask questions of the very things that hold idolatry in your heart, and he'd attack that because he knows and he's smart and he wants you to surrender. And he doesn't do it because he's bored or he's a bully. He does it because he loves you and he knows what's best for you. Just like if I were to hang out with my kids and I know they've been eating junk food for 4 hours because their mom is not at home. They're watching online right now. And if I were to have a loving conversation with them, I'm going to tell them, look, knock it off and eat some pho. It's good for you. Why do I do that? Because I know something that's better for you. I need to confront something to introduce something better. And that's what Jesus does. See, I love one of these stories. Is one of my favorite pastors, John Piper. He has this church, and in his church, he had these two women in his church that were in their 80s, and they decided that the last leg of their life, they were going to be missionaries in Cameroon. And so these two beautiful women of God, Ruby and Laura, they spent their final years as missionaries in Cameroon. They're in their 80s, and then one day, serving God, folks, their brakes fail. They drive off a cliff and instantly die. Then the pastor stands before his church and says, church, isn't this tragic? And everyone's like, oh my gosh, yes. He goes, no, that is not tragic. That's glory. He goes, you want to know what's tragic? He goes, I read in the Reader's Digest this last week of another couple named Bob and Penny who retired early. They bought a yacht and they spent their last days of their life collecting seashells. He said, folks, that is a tragedy. To stand before God one day and say that you spent the last years of your life saying, Lord, here's my seashells. Folks, that's the reality as Christians. That's the reality if we are a follower of Christ. Living a life that outlives you. Living a life that outlives your life. And it starts with just saying, Jesus, what do you want with my life? I'll do whatever. And that's a big thing, and not everyone can get there right away, but it's got to start at some point. To get, Jesus, I will give up my relationship if you want that. God, I'll quit my job if you would want that. God, I'll do whatever you would like, honestly, because at the end of the life, your parents won't judge you. Your community won't be judging you. Your spouse won't be judging you. Your pastor will not be there. You will stand before the holy God alone, and you will give an assessment to of your life. You see, this message is about how to live your life that outlives you. And the reality is, in every one of our hearts, we have this yearning for this. We kind of have this sense that there's got to be more. There's got to be more. I got a great routine, great family. I'm working. I'm succeeding. I'm moving up the org chart. Man, I got a good rhythm. I spend the weekends are sacred. So that's me and my friends. Man, we go down the Presidio. Man, we eat well. And then I work hard. Like I got this rhythm. Don't disrupt it. But then if you were to sit alone in a room just long enough, you'd say, something's missing actually. Even pop culture knows this. In the movie The Barbie, Billie Eilish writes one of the greatest songs. I love this song. I want to cry every time. What was I made for? And now I'm going to sing it for you. No, I'm joking. But man, it's like Barbie, man, I never, okay, but I was moved. I was moved. Like, what was I made for? And all of us have that sense, because Ecclesiastes actually explains where that question comes from. Even Billy's asking that question, but if I were to spend 10 seconds with Billy, I'd say, Billy, Ecclesiastes 3:11, where it says, God has set eternity in humans' heart. Every human being that is alive today, every human being has eternity in their heart. The problem for most of us, though, is we bury that sucker all the way down and we distract ourselves. We just don't want to think about, like, I'm not thinking about eternity. That's what we do. And that's all the devil needs to do. He doesn't need you to be super evil. He just needs you to be distracted enough to not think about eternity. Just medicate you enough, distract you enough, and entertain you enough to not ask those questions. Suppress that sucker down. But if you were to sit alone in a room, it'd come up and be like, gosh, there's something more. C.S. Lewis put it this way: if we find in ourselves a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. Woo! Ooh, I got goosebumps. I get goosebumps because I'm Pentecostal growing up. Pastor Travis, pray for me. Still in therapy. No, I'm joking. But I love C.S. Lewis. If we find a desire in this life that nothing in this world can satisfy, think about it. It's got to be because there's something else. And it's the desire to live a life that outlives your life. And I'm going to share here's the rest of the sermon. Ready? I'm going to share 3 false starts that culture feeds us on how we should live our lives. These are the 3 false starts. Then I will share Jesus' way on how to live your life. And then we'll close with a prayer. And we'll pray for the Blue Jays to beat the Dodgers. Amen. Amen, somebody. I've never loved Canada more than I do right now. So irrelevant. I'm sorry. Eternity. Okay, here we go. 3 false starts that culture will tell you this is how you should live your life. And the first one is so important, folks, especially in San Francisco. It's misaimed success. Or what I would say, succeeding at things that really don't matter. You see, in 2004, there was an Olympian. He was an American a rifle shooter. Have you ever seen those competitions? They're so strange. Anyways, I won't get into it. But Matt Emmons, he was an Olympian, a rifle shooter. He was just 1 shot away, folks, from winning the gold medal. He didn't even need a bullseye, actually. He just needed to be like an average shot just on the target. So he took a steady breath. He pulled the trigger and bam, hit it right in the middle of the bullseye. But folks, he hit the wrong target. He hit the neighbor's lane. So he went from 1st place all the way to 8th place. The shot was perfect. It didn't count. And this is what it's like to live our life when we don't fall in line with Jesus' commands. You've succeeded. You've done incredibly well. You've broken generations of poverty and never doing anything, and you're the one that's done it. You broke the mold. But did you aim at the wrong target, folks? This is what D.L. Moody meant when he said our greatest fear in life should not be a failure, but it should be at succeeding at things in life that really don't matter. I get a little cynical sometimes. I go to the Warriors game. I love the Warriors, and every now and then a halftime show will appear. And there's this one woman. I'm not trying to make fun of her or anything because I really respect it, but I do use it as perspective for my kids. Where this woman's on a really high unicycle, and she's doing these bowls, on her foot, and she flicks it up. She catches it on her head, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I turned to my kids and I said, kids, our greatest fear isn't that we fail, but we succeed at stuff that doesn't matter. And I said, I love her and I respect her, and she's doing her, man, that's her hustle, and she's doing great. But can you imagine spending your life like, God, check this out? No, I'm joking. This is misaimed success. You know, I also get to work with pro athletes every now and then, and there was one in particular a couple of years ago who was starting to let a little bit of the fame get to his character, and he's a Christian, and you could kind of sense a shift. And I had to politely remind him in a loving, super loving way over a conversation. And I said, "Hey, can I just share something?" See, because I did 17 years of ministry in the Tenderloin district, okay? So when you're in the Tenderloin district, it's like life and death. The people you minister to will be alive on a Monday and then sometimes dead on a Thursday. And that's 17 years. I'm telling you, I'm not just saying something trite. It's the reality. I was faced with death every day. I was faced with horrible situations every day. So then you go up to the other side of culture where these pro athletes are in their 20s making millions, and now fame is starting to shape their character in a different way. I have to sometimes shock them into reality because they live in this bubble. They live in this bubble where everything's catered to them, 3 meals a day. I mean, people walking around like, do you need anything? Do you need anything? Do you need it? Because they just need them to succeed. So what do you need? What do you need? And I'm there in the middle saying, hey, excuse me, can I tell you something? The reality is this: you put tights on for a living, and then you hit a ball over a fence. And I don't say that degrading, and I don't say that to everyone, because there's other athletes, they're not Christians yet, and they don't understand. If I were to say that, it'd be really offensive, and I don't want to offend anyone, but this guy's a believer, a Christian, and I said, bro, at the end of the day, you're hitting a ball over a fence in tights. Or like the Niners, you're putting on tights and you're running a ball across a line. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, if you succeed at that and God gives you that platform and that fame and that fortune, then the question is, what can you do with that that will matter? See, that's the thing. Some of you here, you're so successful, you've built an app that gets people to be stuck on their phone. And at the end of the day, you're like, God, look what I built. Okay, you're successful, but what are you going to do with that success? You've made a fortune. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being rich. I like what Rick Warren says. He says, there's nothing wrong with being rich. There is a problem if you die rich. And I love that, because everything that God has entrusted to you, he's asking you, will you live a life that outlives yourself by giving it away? We'll get to that in a second. But the reality is, culture will say, just be successful. But that's misaimed success. And there's nothing wrong with, again, ball players or business or art or medicine. These are beautiful gifts, but they only matter if they are surrendered to God's purpose. You see, what I would tell a non-Christian athlete is, this matters a lot. It matters that you succeed so that you can live for the glory of God. The second false start that the culture will say is, this is how you should live, is really self-glorification. We're so obsessed with self-promotion, attaching a name to everything. I want my name on a building, on a brand, on a scholarship, on a street. And there's nothing wrong with being honored, folks. But when that's the goal of your life, is to have your name live beyond this world, you've missed the point of life. Because as Christians, again, it is not your name that matters. There's only one name that matters, and his name is Jesus. What truly matters is not that our name lasts when we die, but that his name lasts when we die. The third false start is hyper-individualism. And I'm going to lean into this one a little bit, but this is the idea that we all, to some degree, isn't it true that we're all working towards, at the end of the day, being completely autonomous? It is true. It's like, I will one day have no boss and no responsibilities. No underlings, no one to care for, like no one, like I don't have to, no one has to report to me. Like I could be left alone and just go to Good Luck Dim Sum on Clement in the morning, walk around, have Osha Thai for, I'm just saying my dream scenario here, Osha Thai for lunch, and then end the day at Harborview. It's like, man, that's a perfect day. No boss looking for me, no one under me. It's like, I just want to live my life. And that's what we all think, actually. We all have different variations of this. Like, I just want to do me. And I got to be successful enough to where I can break away from the rat race and actually just be autonomous. Okay, problem, folks. That's a huge problem for Christians. Because when we come to Jesus, we are no longer independent. Jesus actually tethers us to community. One of my favorite books in life. Oh man, Ronald Rawheiser. He writes about this powerful teaching about Peter. Peter. Now Peter, he denied Jesus 3 times, and then Jesus dies. So Peter goes back to fishing. All of a sudden, Jesus comes back to life, and then when Peter sees Jesus, they have breakfast together. So it's a profound moment where Peter's like, "I'm sorry, I denied you, Jesus. Like, I'm super sorry I did that." And Jesus says something to him. He goes, "Hey, Peter," this is in John 21, "when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. But when you grow old, someone will put a rope around you and take you where you would rather not go." And Rollheiser in his book is talking about baptism. Baptism is the moment a conscriptive rope is tied around us. It's God's way of saying your life is no longer just your own. Love will lead you to places you don't want to go. Jesus was telling Peter in that moment, he goes, "Dude, when you were younger, you could be autonomous and do whatever." He goes, "But now that you're truly going to follow me," he actually was describing his death. He says, "You're going to actually be tied up with this rope one day, and you will die for my name." And do you remember what Peter said? He's like, "Oh yeah, what about the other disciples? What's going to happen to them?" And Jesus is like, "Don't worry about them. I'm talking about you." And the illustration here is when we get baptized into the faith of Christianity, Jesus says, "I'm sorry, you're no longer an independent self that's completely autonomous," but he ties you with a rope and he says, "You belong to a community of believers from the past that have all died, and they live as a cloud of witnesses in heaven, and they watch our life. And the believers that will come in the future." But right here, look at this room. You look at this room and you say, I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna hear Pastor Travis's sermon because I need to get fed spiritually, and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna tackle this week. And you're missing the point. The point is, man, this is family right here. Like you got to look across this room and say, "God, give me a deep love for my brother and sister right there. God, let me be more hospitable with my home to invite this family over and share a meal and hear their story." Because if you're like me, I work with people all the time. So when I get time by myself, I don't want to see humans. I want to watch The Godfather alone in a dark room. I want to be by myself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that becomes your goal, it's like, how is my life becoming more hospitable? Am I becoming a welcoming person in my life? Independence might make you successful, but interdependence, honestly, will make you significant. The most successful people I know have strong community. You can't do it alone, folks. Okay, so that's how the culture says that we should live. They say, hey, misaligned or misaimed success, glorify yourself, and be autonomous. But here's the deal. Those are the false starts. Here's the real path. Jesus gives us answers on how we can actually feel fulfilled, okay? How we can actually live a life that outlives ourselves. And the first way to do that is by making disciples. Matthew chapter 28, 18 through 20. It says that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. This is the command that defines every one of us as believers. You were saved not just so you can get a get out of jail free card from hell, but God actually has a purpose for you. And for all of us, it's kind of the same thing, just it looks differently. Some of you are born for the corporate world, and you're blessed because you're gifted and anointed for the boardroom. Some of you are in the nonprofit space. Some of you are entrepreneurial. Some of you, are blue collar, just straight up hard workers. It doesn't matter kind of what our occupation is. Our calling's all the same as Christians, which is to make disciples. What you might say, what does that mean? Well, disciple is a learner, a follower, or an apprentice. So if I was a plumber and I was going to retire, I'd take my son or another young man and I'd say, or young woman, and I'd say, do you want to be a plumber too? Oh yeah. Okay. Follow me for the next 6 months on every job that I go to, and I'm going to teach you how to be a plumber. You don't teach someone how to plumb through a book in a classroom. You go on the job and you get it done, because there's stuff that's going to happen in every house that you're called to that's not written in a textbook. It's the same with Jesus. Jesus says, hey, there's this new kingdom that's coming to earth. I'm ushering it in. It's the kingdom of God. It's the kingdom of my Father. I want to bring it down to earth. And so he goes, I want to have some disciples learn on how to live in this kingdom. So he calls 12 young men together. He goes, follow me, be my disciples. And does he teach them in a classroom? No, he does not. He says, follow me. And he goes about town to town and he meets people's physical needs. He teaches people about eternity and what's next in this life. And then ultimately, he dies on the cross. He teaches them on the go. So what does it mean for us to make disciples? It's the same thing. We have to find people in our lives that we can help them know Jesus personally, grow in his truth, and then live out his ways. It's discipleship, helping someone else become more like Jesus. And I'm telling you, folks, it's a command given to every single one of us as Christians. And so I want to politely challenge you and say, are you making a disciple? Have you made a disciple? Do you need to make a disciple? It's time for us. This is what it means to live a life that outlives yourself. Some of you in this room, you may think when I first opened up and said, hey, what do you think about legacy? What do you think about living a life that outlives yourself? You're thinking automatically, get married, have children, because that's a natural way for your name to outlive yourself. Well, can I tell you, folks, then what about single people in the kingdom? What about people that are barren and can't have children? One of my best friends in life, for years, tried for 15 years to have children, and they never ended up having children. Folks, when Jesus says that we make disciples, he's saying that that's the way to allow your life to live on beyond your life. It's not having children, although that's a huge part of it, but he's also giving equal status to everyone in the kingdom. Whether you're married with children or whether you're single, whether you're barren, it doesn't matter. Jesus has a plan and purpose for your life. In fact, we should remind ourselves that the one we call Lord and the one we follow, he was single without children. We need single people in the kingdom of God. In fact, if you're single right now, stand up. I'm going to introduce you to... No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. But I just don't want any single people here to feel like, gosh, I feel like my life is not going anywhere because I don't have someone. Folks, what are you talking about? Jesus was single. Look to him. Follow his commands. I guarantee you, if you just do the things he told us to do, the other stuff will fall into place. How do I know that? Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all the other things will be added to you. You know how I found my wife? This is before apps. By serving, because that's what I love to do. And guess what? There was another girl that showed up, started serving, and I was like, dang, just saved me a ton of time. I don't have to have like 6 dates to figure out what she likes. Do the things Jesus calls you to do, and then all of a sudden, along the way, you'll start to understand. I just want to tell you one quick story, and then we'll close real quick. But this is my friend Visna. I think we have a picture of Visna. Yeah, top left, my best friend in life. I was 17 years old. I really felt God tell me to be a youth director in the Tenderloin district. And I was a youth myself, 17. And I said, God, I'll do whatever. I was crazier back then. I'm crazy now. I was crazier then because I had nothing to lose. Now I'm like a little more calculated because I got a wife and kids. But back then I was, I'll do whatever. So I moved to the Tenderloin and I was like, just going door to door, like, hey, can I have Bible study in your home? And they used to call me back then because it's predominantly, back then it was a lot of Southeast Asians, Black community back then. Now it's turned a little more Hispanic and Arab community. But back then, it was a lot of Southeast Asians, a lot of Cambodians, and I would go door to door, and they'd call me White Boy Jesus. Oh no, everybody hide, White Boy Jesus coming. And I met this young man, and he was standing at 245 Leavenworth, and I knew about him because everyone knew about this man named V, prolific gangster in the Tenderloin that was actually quite nice if he liked you, and quite terrorizing if he didn't. And he was really known for three things. He's incredible, one of the best fighters. He's been in, we counted, he's been in 23 fights. He's only lost twice. One because they had bats, the other one because it was 13 Samoans and he was just alone. Okay, you're going to lose that one. But the other 21 fights, he won. Great fighter. And when I met him, he's about 18 years old. And he's just shooting dice, drinking Hennessy, and gang banging every day. And I said, eventually, I'm out here by myself going door to door. I said, hey, V, I heard about you. I'd love to go camping with you. He's like, bro, dude, no, I'm not going camping with you. And I said, oh, wait, I know that sounds weird, but seriously, let's go camping 5 days. He said, I'm not going camping with you. That is totally off limits. And I said, okay, tell you what, compromise. Let's spend 5 days at the church, just right here on Jones Street. I said, what we'll do is we'll just have breakfast, read the Bible, have lunch, read the Bible, and have dinner, read the Bible. I said, because I just want to ask one question. You're 18 years old. Do you have anything in your life that you're proud of that you could say, wow, this is a good life you're living? And he thought about it. He's a very introspective man. He said, no, I don't. I said, then give God 5 days, see what he could do in 5 days what you can't even do in 18 years. See if God's real or not. Simple challenge. I love him because he loves a challenge. He said, I'll do that with you at the church only, but I'm bringing a friend too. I said, bring friend. His name is Miguel. Visna and Miguel come over on a Monday. Miguel quits half day. He's like, this is so boring. I'm out. Okay, he leaves. First day, I said, V, do you leave? And what I love about Cambodians, super loyal, never back down from a fight. He goes, no, I gave my word. I'm staying. I said, all right. So we did that 3 days. Just read the Bible and shared meals together. Read the Bible. And for 3 days, I'm trying to walk him down the sinner's road, the Romans road, like, you're a sinner, Jesus died for you. And he doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to know, why is it illegal to smoke marijuana if God put it on the earth? For 3 days, he asked the same question. I said, Holy Spirit, you got to give me an answer because I don't know. This is before it was legal. I said, I don't know. And then, it took me a while. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I said, hey, V, there's poison ivy in the world, and I don't suggest you roll around in it. He goes, that makes sense. I say, you probably shouldn't smoke things that make you dumber, okay? Now, if you need it for medicinal purposes, I understand. That's fine. That you need that for your body. I was telling this to him. I'm not telling that to you. You do what you do, okay? I said, and I said, 3 days of that. Fourth day, he wakes me up. He says, hey, God spoke to me. I'm like, dude, no. You're not even saved yet. God can't speak to you, bro. Like, this is scary because, he has very strong ties to Buddhism. His grandfather is a priest in the Buddhist temple in Oakland. And so I know that there's some demonic stuff going on. I'm like, no, I don't think you're hearing the right voice. And I said, what did God say? He said, God said to do 3 things. He said to flush this bag of drugs down the toilet. And he holds up the biggest bag of ecstasy pills I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, what in the world is that? It's like ecstasy. I said, what do you do with that? He's like, I sell it. He goes, that's how I have this. And he held up his cash. And I said, you've been driving around in my freaking car for 3 days with these drugs? Dump that down the toilet. So we flushed it down the church toilet. I asked him how much it was worth, and then I immediately regretted it because I was a struggling youth pastor. I should have told him to sell it and then tithe, but it's okay. Flushed it down the toilet. I said, what else did God say? He said, well, I got to go home for this one. So I took him to his home, and he says, could you come in and help me? But he had these 2 dogs that I'm afraid of dogs, and I was like, no, I'm not going in. They're 2 pit bulls. I'm not going in there. So he went in there for like a half hour, came back. I said, what did God say? He said, to burn my pornography. Back then it was magazines. He had a stack of them, and he went in his backyard and just burnt them all. Then I said, dude, this is worse. This is like getting worse. What else? He says, I got to put my dogs down, my 2 dogs. 2 pit bulls he trained to fight, cocaine. And I said, I will not help you with that, but I'll call my sister. So I called my sister. I said, hey, one of the youth here needs to bring their pet to the SPCA. Would you come over? So she came over. He laid his dogs down, and he stood before the church. And I'm summarizing this, but he's basically said, what do I do with my life now? From that day till now, it's been my best. I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know, because Giants lost. But from that day till now, he's never left my side. 25, 26 years later, and we used to sit together. I said, V, let's move in together. Let's go reach other youth. We would worship. We'd pray. We'd go to the Mendocino County. We'd fast. We'd go to Oracle parking lot. We'd say, God, just let there be a revival in this city. Let churches be planted in the city. Me and Visa would just be out in the parking lot by ourselves saying, God, save our friends, save our families, do something. And then we talk about, hey, maybe one day we'll get married, not to each other, but we'll get married and we'll have children and we'll live near each other. We'll raise our kids. And God gave us everything we could ever imagine. Our kids are roughly the same age. Our wives are best friends. We live 15 minutes from each other. We do ministry together every day. And I look back at my life and I say, I can stand before God. I'll die right now and say, God, even if it was just Visna, that's a great life. Because this man is still out there in the Tenderloin, cutting all these kids' hair, talking them off the ledge from shooting someone, telling them to forgive the person that just murdered your cousin, leading people to Jesus, man. And that's just one story. We had about a dozen of these kids. I don't have enough time to finish this message, but I really want to tell you that if you just live the life that Jesus tells you to live and obey his commands, it doesn't have to be a crazy, this is a crazy story because it was a crazy time in the Tenderloin. But it looks different in your world. It looks a little more controlled. But will you go into work on Monday and say, God, I need to live a life that outlives me. I'm so freaking self-focused. I'm just so focused on me. Let me just, it's not even about others. God, I love you. What do you want? What do you want? You want me to tell someone in my company about you? I'll do it. You want me to spend the next 15 weeks with this person, even though they annoy me, just to go through the word? I'll do it. I'll do anything that you want me to do. It's more about that. That's what I'm challenging you, is get alone with God and say, God, what do you want? What do you want? And Jesus' path's going to be the same. Make disciples, be a witness, and pour out your life. Be generous. Let me pray for you.